error codes, software malfunctions, paper jams. If you work in an office, a school, or a newsroom, especially today, we're having some printer issues. You know what printer problems can do. It can have a serious impact on your day's work. Well, surprisingly, the same could be said for Quebec's microbreweries. A major technical problem with the printer used to stamp labels on the province's microbreweries has led, cans, by the way, has led to a massive production slowdown. That's created a major backlog to getting their products on store shelves just before the beginning of summer. Jean-Michael Noël is the general manager and co-owner of Noctem Artisan Brasseur. It's right here in the Saint-Sauveur, Saint-Roch districts of Quebec. His microbrewery is one of those affected. He joins us in our Quebec City studios. Jean-Michael, welcome to Breakaway.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come to the studios. We really appreciate it. So, as I mentioned right away, for listeners who might not be familiar with your company, can you tell us a little bit about Noctem Artisan Brasseur? What do you do?
Sure. We're based here in Quebec City. We've been open since 2015. We started up as a brew pub in Saint-Roch. We are specialized in IPAs, sour beers, fruited sour beers, and lagers. After a few years of operating in Saint-Roch, we started a factory from which we brew and can beers that is distributed across the province. So we've been working with Heartprint for quite a few years already.
You said hard print.
Heartprint.
Print. So, yes. Okay. So, explain to us why this is happening. What is slowing down the printing of your cans?
It's more than one thing. I believe you mentioned the equipment malfunction, which is one thing that happened at the worst possible time, for sure.
What time is that?
In spring, as it tends to happen when we all build up production for the summertime. There are new beers coming up, new packs, all this stuff from all the breweries across the province. And North America, because Heartprint, they do export their cans to other provinces and to the States. Everybody is in the same boat trying to fulfill the orders for the summertime.
Wow. Okay. So Heartprint is the name of the company that has this issue right now.
Yes.
You said that it happened during the spring, as it tends to happen. This is not the first time?
It tends to happen at the worst possible time, like every
it's
major
like stars
equipment
aligning. Okay,
breakdown, yeah.
I understand. Unfortunately, stars are aligning in the wrong way. You brought some beers here. So for our listeners to understand, I'm just going to take one off the rack here. For listeners to understand, when you look at a can of beer, in comparison to a wine bottle, for example, this is not a label that you stick on the can.
That's right.
What is the label like on this beer? Can you describe this for me?
Yes, for sure. It's digitally printed on the can. The technology is UV ink, which is cured by UV light, and it makes it hard and it won't scrape off. Makes very vivid colors and high resolution, which is great for the label needs of the microbreweries that needs to be catchy. Mm-hmm. The thing is, if we come back a few years in the past, Recyc Quebec changed a law which made it impossible for breweries to use a foreign material than aluminum in the order of more than 1% in weight. So the labels that we were used to use in the past were made part in plastic. So we couldn't use that anymore. Most breweries at that time tried to use paper labels to compensate for this change in regulation. But the technology of the paper labels was not quite right, so it was a bit bubbly.
And we all want to put our beer cans in water to keep them cold or in ice, right? So
exactly.
That has an impact on your labeling as well.
It needs to resist to being immersed in water, for sure. And a lot of breweries, like us, for another reason beforehand, chose to use the digital printing technology, which was brought to market mainly by Heartprint.
Oh.
So this kind of put everybody together in some kind of funnel to this supplier, which makes very great labels, that's for sure, but it brings up a risk in the industry for all those players relying on one sole supplier.
You mentioned that you decided to work with this supplier in order to get that digital printing. Obviously, those who know you, Noctem, know that very strong feature of the cats.
Yeah.
Cat pictures, if I can put it that way, are abundant on all of your cans. Actually, I'm surprised to see this one where it takes a little bit of away from your usual cat. What is the reason that you initially chose to go towards them? Was it because you wanted to have a little bit more detail in the cat pictures that you use?
It's funny we're here today because of a malfunction that happened to them, which impacts the breweries. At the time, when we started up the factory, there was a major shortage of aluminum can across North America.
That's where I wanted to take you, so I'm happy you're bringing that up.
So at that time, Crown, one of the big conglomerate making those cans, what I heard, they oversold their order book. So they made the mistake calculating their capacity to order, and they couldn't fulfill them. So this brought a few months, if not a year, of big shortages for mainly the smaller players. That what tends to happen also in those times.
And you were a small player. You were thus impacted by that?
Yes, of course. In this particular shortage, we were a very small player. Now with hard print, we are a bit bigger than other breweries that might have a harder time than us to navigate this particular shortage.
You mentioned that aluminum can shortage. I believe there was 2021, I believe. A bit earlier than that. And now we're talking about hard print for the digital printing. What do these situations tell you about the state of competition in the microbrewing industry? Would the industry benefit from other players in the industry?
Yes, for sure. And if there's not other players, we know there will be. There are projects right now coming up to production that will mitigate this risk. But if there is a monopoly in the technology that's used, for sure the breweries need to be aware of them, of those risks when they navigate, when they choose to do business with those suppliers. Otherwise, if they're not willing to take up this risk, they need to maybe think of maybe go back to labeling, which right now can make very great results.
Is that something that you are considering? Because how long of a delay are you facing when it comes to receiving your orders now?
It's at 6 weeks. The problem is not as much as from the delays than the extension of the lead times that we had to face. So in the past few months, every now and then, there was an addition of a week to the expected lead times. So this adding a week is the problem.
It's a problem for the beer as well. How are you able to stabilize that beer that's in production? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I know a little bit about the microbrewing industry and how much, you have Excel sheets for everything that you're working on. And as the general manager of Noctem Brewery, you are focused almost a year ahead for the grains, for the hops, especially for the hops. We haven't even touched on that. That's an issue. Now the digital printing for the access to the aluminum cans. I mean, how much of a big deal is this for you right now in order to solidify your production capabilities?
Yes. So when something like that happens, it tends to have impacts on all the production schedule. So we have to make sure, go fermenter by fermenter, that we can move our beer in time for the next batch to be brewed. So when we're at full capacity, that's where the puzzle is the hardest. If it would happen in the calm of winter, that wouldn't be such an issue. But right now, in spring, most microbreweries are at full capacity or close to. So that's where you can face the worst possible outcome, where you can't move your beer from the fermenter, because beer ferments for about 3 weeks in bulk. Then you have to move it to cans and package it. So you get that out of the way for the new beer to be fermented in bulk. So if you can't move it out of the way, the new beer that you plan to brew, you won't be able to put it anywhere. So you have to cancel this particular batch. That's where the impact is the gravest, because you're in spring and summertime where selling this beer would be the easiest. So you cannot recoup this loss further down the year in fall. That won't happen.
So are you thinking about maybe going and selling in bulk, selling for tap, for example?
It's a hard market also.
It's a hard
market also.
Okay.
You have to make choices. Either you scrap the batch or maybe you postpone the canning.
When you own and operate a company like Noctem that's been around, that has a really good reputation here in the city of Quebec, but in the province as well, and you control the production of the beer, you control the canning of the beer, you've invested in the factory a few years ago in Saint-Sauveur. When you see this happening, do you consider investing in order to control the labeling of your beer as well?
For sure. Our patience is tested, maybe our risk tolerance is tested. So we always, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, we always think of how can we mitigate this risk in the future. So we'll navigate the problem right now, but we'll mitigate the risk for the future.
How are you navigating the problem right now?
We had to cancel a batch, we had to postpone cannings, then we have to think, do we believe that in the future we can go as is, as if nothing happened, or maybe we are afraid that something might happen again, and we have to think about all the possibilities for us.
There are some fans of your company, like other breweries across the province, that are affected by the situation. Yes. By the way, have you heard of other of your pals? What are they? Are they going through exactly the same thing as you are?
Maybe worse. We tend to maybe plan ahead a bit more than other people because we're kind of bigger than other breweries. So at that point, we have to have better system in place, maybe. But we have heard from friends having worse issues where they were short when the delays were 2 weeks. Then when it comes to 6, you lose all this time. So the beer is in the tanks waiting as you could sell them right now. So
Jean-Michel, there are some people listening right now that want to help. They want to give a helping hand. Do you have some ideas, suggestions? What can we consumers, beer lovers, do in order to lend a helping hand to you, Noctem, or to the other microbreweries who are facing a real issue right now?
It's always good to try some new beers and figure out what you like. Maybe some products that you can adopt in the future. Maybe be tolerant because you might see some new labeling features that won't be up to par as the near past. So you can see some changes on the shelves. Be aware that it might come from a bigger problem for the breweries.
Jean-Michel, I really appreciate you coming in studio to explain the situation to us today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks.